So I'm David Weiner. I run the agency channel here for Conductor. I've been with the company a little over 5 years, and over the last 3 years, I've really spent all of our time, or my time, building out all the partnerships that we have with agencies. And this group represents a number of people that we work very closely with, some of our most important partners and leaders in the agency space. So I'll let them take a minute and introduce themselves. Herndon, if you wanted to get started.
Sure. I'm Herndon Hasty with iProspect. We've been working with Conductor now since 2010.
Joel Breen. I head the search and performance marketing team at AMP Agency, and we've been with Conductor for about 2 years now, right?
Yeah.
John Clark, SEO director, manage our national SEO practice at Razorfish. Been working with Conductor about 2 years as well.
Hi, I'm Rosti. I am the group vice president of search at Publicis Health Media. We've been working with Conductor for about 2 years now.
I'm Alcamo, the director of search at R2 Integrated in Baltimore. We've been with Conductor for about 2 years.
Great. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for participating. Really appreciate you making the time. And so I think the conversation today will cover a wide range of topics. The first thing, and just so everybody knows, I'm here to help facilitate. I think I'm going to give some layup questions, and then I'm going to get out of the way and let these guys do a lot of the talking. But the first part that we want to talk about is just team enablement and multi-channel engagement. I think there's been a big sort of move in the industry to sort of break the silos, right? Let's get everybody working together and really think about cross-channel collaboration. So, as you guys think about that and the way that you run your teams and run your business, how have you bridged this gap internally in terms of getting everybody to work together? I don't know if Ray, maybe you wanted to start off with.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that as a search agency, we were born within a full-service digital agency, so we really understood all the connection points between search and all of the other digital disciplines. I would say our success really has come from really having a strong partnership with the project managers. They hold the keys to everything that an agency does digitally. And whether it's our project managers, a partner agency that our client's working with, or our client's project managers, I think getting with them, training with them on the process, and understanding really where we need to be inserted is really important, because they can be our advocate when we're not in the room.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think communication is really key, and just making sure that you bring everybody in a room together to talk is easier sometimes than communicating by email. And the other thing that we've done is also utilize an in-house tool for task tracking. So everyone who's on a project can log in, see what everybody else is doing, no matter what silo they're in.
Great.
So we, similarly, I think we really took a strong effort to trying to educate the producers and the project managers, but also on the account side, we've gone ahead and built a competency model for the account teams to understand where SEO and search it all fits in, so they have that ability to, one, identify the opportunities within the client business, but also identify when they need to engage those particular teams.
And all our teams sit together, so it's very easy to, not just from that email standpoint, but just to be able to hear what everybody's up to. We're on each other's calls, so that those little snippets that still might manage to just sneak by you, especially since there's so much from e-com and other things like that pop up from calls that normally the paid team fields and the SEO group doesn't necessarily catch. Getting that close collaboration really makes a difference in terms of SEO being able to get involved in some of those projects early on, as well as being able to kind of fuel some of the things that PPC needs to do their job well.
Yeah, I think in addition to the kind of close proximity, we found that integrated meetings are very helpful as well. So everyone can kind of talk about what they're doing, and sometimes that alone is helpful in finding different opportunities that other teams might be working on that the SEO team might not be.
And I think that's an interesting topic, sort of integrated meetings. It's great to hear sort of internally how some of that is going on. Talk a little bit about how you see that happening from the client side as well, and the way that you work together. Your team's all working together, but also connecting with your clients and how they're breaking some of those silos as well.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. One of the things that we do is called an agency summit. So we'll bring together all the different groups that are working for the client, including their internal resources, any other agencies that might be involved, and we'll strategize together to make sure that we understand what everybody's doing in all the different channels, on and offline, and make sure that we're integrated in what we're working on.
I would say what we've done really over the last couple of years is work really hard to come into our clients obviously from a search lens, but really as an insights agency as well. I always like to say that Google's the largest ongoing behavioral study, and there's so much rich data in there. So we consistently bring that information to clients, and what it affords us is the ability to have a seat at almost every table in anything our clients are doing. So they want us there to sort of provide that lens of like, what are you seeing? How are you seeing people search for information in this aspect, and how does that influence what we're developing in all channels? So it's been really great for us to be able to get that seat, and I think that allows us to be really integrated.
Yeah, I think from working with different clients, the important part is being able to share data that allows us to have smarter conversations and for them to take interest in us helping them reach whatever their goals are. So if we kind of know where to position the conversation, it allows us to be much more strategic with everything that we talk about across the different lines of business.
Cool. And as you've done that, and as you're working with the different teams working together, as well as working with your clients, how have you seen sort of, and Searchlight is a part of this in terms of our vision around getting data to people earlier and connecting people that way. How have you seen just the ability to access data or share data and communicate help in terms of the way that you're both working together internally as well as with your clients? And if you have any examples of things that you've done where data has helped one channel or one team perform better compared to what they were doing, that would be great.
Data is a huge motivator. Results are a huge motivator. Even the kinds of people that you wouldn't necessarily think would just absolutely flip out to see rankings change or hear about kind of traffic sorts of things. It's absolutely key to getting people moving. Having data up front to be able to say this is what the issue looks like, and then as you start looking, at some of those integrations after you've done a training, going back 3 weeks later after some of those things have started to sink in, letting them know what that impact is, especially if basically you wind up with just kind of a test group up front. So in a lot of cases when we work with like a large number of copywriters, there will be kind of one section of a website that after we've gone in and really trained everybody on keyword research, on keyword usage, linking, and other things like that, there will be one group that winds up kind of being tasked first. Somebody really takes the ball and rolls with it. And the sooner you can show any kind of results there, number one, it's going to motivate their bosses to want to get even more of those results coming in. But it's hilarious sometimes to see creatives or developers taunting each other over what, the kinds of results that they were able to drive based on insights that we could pull from analytics and of course, from Conductor.
Yeah, I think we're the same way. I mean, we tend to try to lead with data. At the end of the day, it's kind of tough to argue with math. But really, it's getting in there and making sure that everything that we're bringing to the clients, not overwhelming them with data, but it's tied back to whatever their business objective is, and how particularly search and SEO can impact that, and how you can actually get to a quantifiable ROI, which has always been one of those kind of black boxes of SEO, I think, which Conductors help with, trying to tie back and seeing those actions and tying back to that overall business growth.
Yeah, I think the segmentation of data, for us is one of the ways we use Conductor quite a bit in terms of dividing out dashboards based on different products. So when we're delivering that data to clients, they're getting exactly what they're interested in and what their bosses are also interested in. And so it allows us to have much better conversations and more direct conversations with data that's applicable to them and not necessarily a part of a much larger group of data. So really kind of the segmentation by product is really important.
And everything these guys said, but also for us, with some of the enterprise clients that we work with, is really around scale. So at a sort of a corporate level, if we roll all 50 sites that we work with together, and all these sites are on the same platform, we start to see common errors. And rather than fixing them at the individual level, we can work higher in the organization to try and solve some of these problems so that we're not gouging them for, say, making the same recommendation over and over. I think the other part of the scale is really, whether we're working on strictly pharmaceutical brands or consumer health and wellness brands, we're able to look at trends across all of those. And that's really valuable for clients when you're sort of sharing information across an organization. In many ways, as an agency, we're a connector between brand teams that don't even talk to one another.
Well, yeah, that seems like I think a really important piece. It's not just what are we doing to work with each individual client or what are we doing to work with each individual team, but how are we even using some of that data to drive overall business health, right? And how do we spot trends and opportunities to do things better or areas for improvement that leads to better results for clients also, so that's a great point. So one of the things that we talked about in our sort of email back and forth in planning for this, just looking at some topics, one that came back that was sort of consistent across everybody was just the idea around website redesign, website migration. So I'm just curious if you can sort of go through and talk a little bit about some of the work that you guys do around some of the redesign and migration, and also, where do you guys get involved in the process as part of that? Is it a client coming to you saying, we want to do a website redesign, help us? Do you go to them and say, hey, we think it would make sense? I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that. Maybe, Herndon, you want to start there?
Sure. So in terms of where we wind up getting started is at basically every stage of the game. There are times where we've been brought in before there's even been like a brand name attached to the website that's going to be built. There have been times when they're still working on some of the early technology. We've actually had a fair number in the last little bit that have gone through the entire process, built the site, launched it, didn't like the results at all, and needed somebody to come in to kind of help figure things out. That's absolutely not what you want to wind up doing, just because there's so much that can be baked in for SEO, not just in terms of like technical kinds of considerations, which is where a lot of us go a lot of the time, but thinking ahead to that next stage, content development, where exactly are you going to have a place for an article base, for a blog? Even if it's much more of kind of a design situation, getting them thinking about those things early can make it a lot easier and have a lot less resistance further down the road when all of a sudden you say, okay, great, we need an article base, we need it built into your navigation, here's the, where are you going to put it?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think we've all been involved where it's, you get really early and someone's just talking about a new idea and you can be engaged with that, and others where, hey, the site launched yesterday, can you SEO it? But I think, for us, we try to get as involved as early as possible. Obviously, the more that you can influence with your clients, the more ownership you can have, the more ability you have to grow your business within them. But I think ultimately, it's everything, as Herndon said, to the architecture, to the content, to thinking what's going to come next, to how you're going to build out that usability, and really working closely with that designer and that UX guy to say, hey, this is how we want to be able to get at the content that's important to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that we've done and found is really helpful is actually creating resources for the different stakeholders. So for example, making like a cheat sheet for developers that they can reference when they are creating a site. And then also develop a very solid web process plan and where SEO fits into it, which essentially is throughout the entire thing. But specifically what check-ins the account manager or project manager should be looking for to set up, like at the UX or at the IA or at the wires. Do you bring the SEO person in there? And the answer is yes, but it's helpful for them to have a reference.
I think an area that we've found to be really successful is in the RFP process. So we found that a lot of the BD leads didn't necessarily have deep insights around SEO. So we kind of created a wiki that provided a lot of kind of template answers that they could then customize or reach out to us to customize. We have case studies that are easily downloadable. Just providing them the assets that they need to be able to answer questions smartly. And most importantly, starting to get them thinking about the importance of SEO in a web development project or a redesign or kind of a re-architecture across domains or anything like that. I think that alone allows us to get more allocation for the requirements that we need, and along with everything else that the rest of the panel said as well.
Yeah, and I would add that for us, developing a strong relationship with the UX team or the user experience team has been crucial to our success internally. Whether it's a new site or optimizing a few pages, it's not just that page ranking and people getting to that page, but it's actually them being able to take action on that page. So it's not just optimizing for search, but it's optimizing for the user. So we have a really strong relationship with UX, and that whenever there is a redesign, they come to us first to start getting some of the insights we can provide in order to start thinking about architecture and the user as well.
And as you're going through that, how involved do you stay in the process to make sure that from an SEO perspective, things are being built properly, or do you end up with we'll be involved at the beginning to sort of come up with a conceptual idea, and then we'll SEO it at the end. Talk a little bit about what it's like in the back and forth of you being a partner, but also having to navigate the internal aspect of what's being built on the client side.
Sure. So for us, again, it goes back to my earlier statement of really being good friends with the project or program manager. When we sort of, whether it's internal or working with an external partner that the client's working with, we get that project plan and we mark it up and say exactly where we need to be inserted and how much time we need with that. So that sort of at least has something documented where we need to be brought in. But we toggle in whether it's the site mapping, the wireframing, the creative comps, through to sort of a beta, and well as transitioning that domain to the next. So we jump in at what we feel is the most important parts, as well as the content writing and optimization.
Because typically when we're doing a redesign, there's also work that's happening on the existing site too. So there's definitely that little bit of a balance of how much effort and industry are we putting towards the site as it's getting redesigned versus the current one, and then seeing just kind of how that gets staged out bit by bit. Being able to help with the prioritization of what's going to be important to still do at the existing site is hypercritical. What I'd say, the work really kind of comes in fits and starts, because there's like a new there's new documentation that comes through, and especially the first time that you get that new piece of documentation, you have to get it turned around really quickly if you want to be able to keep the trust of everyone involved. The whole project is working on a tight timeline, so the quicker that you can get back that first deliverable, the more everybody's going to be able to trust you to be able to consistently give you more and more. The big piece that also we wind up playing a real big part of is on launch day in terms of getting those redirects checked. Looking for those little bits of the site that managed to get sneaked in right before everything got launched. Basically, just trying to help our clients and our clients' brands avoid some of those little surprises and getting those knocked out as fast as possible.
Yeah, I would say I've definitely been very fortunate in that Razorfish develops a lot of the sites that we're working on. So, we can run upstairs, we can yell across the desk, if we see something inappropriate. But one of the ways we found a lot of success is working directly with the agile teams and kind of building out that workflow where SEO is kind of taken into account throughout the process. And we've gotten to the point where we're joining stand-up meetings, we're part of the pointing process, we're part of the QA process. So really heavily baked into the entire development stream. In situations where that's not possible, we go through a discovery process where we evaluate SEO opportunities within the existing site, and it kind of helps highlight opportunities that we should be aware of when we're thinking about developing a new one. And it helps identify the issues that they have today, why they're an issue, and potentially put an opportunity value to if it's remedied. And that allows us to have much more strategic conversations as well.
Cool. That's great. So I think we'll use the rest of the time. We're going to jump around to a couple of different topics. I know we had a number of things that we went through in terms of what we were thinking about. The first thing is, I think the industry is changing very fast, right? Whether it's thinking about year over year or even day over day. As you look back to 2013 versus 2014, what are some things that you guys are doing differently today versus last year? And also, how do you see things changing or ways that your team will evolve over the next 12 months as well?
I can start. I think the interesting
I'll be better. I'll direct my questions.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing this year is the big theme is obviously content. And I find it hilarious that for years as SEOs, we've been screaming for our clients to develop content. And now that's all they talk about is developing content. So that's obviously a big part of what we're doing is taking search insights to inform content. And it's great for us because they're actually doing the things we need them to do around content development. I would say the other big thing for us is the notion that we really believe that search has moved beyond the search engine. So whether it's thinking about how people search for information in social and how our brand should show up in social or if they should be there at all, is a big part of what we're doing. With our consumer health clients, it's really about how do we work in partnership with the retailers that they're working with and optimize the data feeds that go to them, whether it's Amazon or Target or Walmart. From a app perspective, iTunes and Google Play are search engines. So as our agencies and our clients are developing apps, it's how do we work with them to categorize them and optimize that submission so that it shows up correctly, because those first couple weeks of an app launching are so crucial to its success. And historically, our clients are really about the success was always launching the app and not actually thinking about what happens after you launch it. So that's a big thing. And we're paying a lot of attention to voice search. When you think about hands-free in the automobile, when you look at some of the things that Google is doing with the Knowledge Vault, it's this notion of keywords or questions, and if we get to voice search, I think the user expectation is not to get a search result of 10 links, it's actually to get an answer. So, I think we're going to see the tail dramatically change in the next couple of years if it's adopted, and if so, it's great for us because they're being more detailed about what they're looking for. But how do we optimize for that? How do we create content around that? And how do we have our brand show up for that?
I think you make some interesting points, and I think the biggest thing that I've been seeing, not just this past year, but previously too, is the integration of SEO into all these other channels, and the fact that it is almost a layer that runs over everything that we do for marketing. So you've got these companies like Adobe and Sitecore coming out with these full-service marketing suites, and it really gives you the opportunity to see everything that's going on and leverage that for SEO. So are you optimizing, product data feeds? If you have a real estate client who has ILS listings, are you looking at those descriptions and leveraging all these different elements to benefit SEO?
Yeah, I think I agree with what everyone said so far, and we're looking at it from a perspective of really just kind of breaking down the barriers across SEO and saying it's pervasive. It involves content, it involves apps. If you're out there digitally, you should be thinking about how people are going to find it and what's the intent. And I think as an organization, we've shifted significantly over the last 18 months to leading with intent.
Yeah.
I mean, once you understand the action that someone's going to take and where that particular keyword falls within the conversion funnel, building an awareness campaign to then move people through that funnel is so much easier. And we've really kind of pushed our clients to think that way and stop being like, oh yeah, I should think about search at the end. Start there.
Do you guys think that there's more of a focus too on the customer journey and where SEO fits into that entire process, not just in a certain silo, but as a whole process?
Absolutely. So we, as an organization, we've actually, everyone on the media team has been cross-trained on SEO and paid search to understand how that can impact what they're building out from a traditional media perspective. And I think that's, and at the account level, having them understand to have those conversations, to push the client to think that way, to get out of like, oh, it's my site and I need to worry about that. It's like, no, throw the site out. We'll get there. Let's focus on how do we drive your business and how do we utilize what we know about the consumer to get them there.
Yeah, user-focused.
Yeah, there's been a lot of focus this year on creating personas and especially using a lot of consumer data. The Dentsu Aegis network has its own kind of proprietary set of kind of questionnaire data that for years had previously really been siloed within some of the traditional marketing and to a degree some of the bigger sort of interactive sorts of things that's really now started to make its way down into iProspect and the search areas, and that has been a lot of fun in terms of discovery of kind of those content pieces that might not necessarily hit on some of the direct response kind of terms that normally we're really driven to go after, but much more that kind of 80% of the keyword universe or that 80% of the search universe that's just purely informational, that isn't transactional, and figuring out exactly how best to reach your audience when they're in that mode.
I think the biggest change for us is the stopping of screaming about content and integration and all these different things we were talking so much about in 2013, and actually having the opportunity to do a lot of those things we've been screaming about. And it's being driven a lot by clients. We're getting RFPs that are asking for these things, and strategies or those types of things are being elevated as a primary focus area for 2014. So it's really allowed us to be a little bit more strategic with a lot of the things we've been preaching for the last year. And it is exciting.
So I guess that brings, I think, a sort of nice spin on the same question. What are things that your clients could do to get more out of their agency team, right? Maybe it's just getting out of your way, maybe it's listening to you more. But as you think about the way that you work with your clients, or the fact that you sit at such an interesting intersection of seeing so many different types of brands and different types of initiatives that you work on, what are things that your clients could do to help get more out of the engagement they have with you? And John, maybe I'll start with you. Sorry.
You say John?
Yeah, John, sorry. You just happened to be looking at me like you wanted to answer.
Well, it's funny. I actually just tweeted this the other day. Like, responsive clients are a goldmine. We're constantly thinking on their behalf, coming up with strategies, but ultimately we can't necessarily move forward without their approval. And responsive clients that get back to us in 24 hours or even sooner allow us to keep moving, to keep thinking, to actually put things in place. Finalize deliverables. I'm sure there's a million things clients could help us with, but I think responsiveness as a starting point is a great attribute.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think just the idea, too, of being very open and of approaching it as, bring us a business goal, a business problem, and let us go to work on it rather than a very specific request like, I want to rank on these keywords, or, I need paid search. Give us your goal and let us come to you with a solution.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing for us is our clients always challenge us with being integrated with them and the other partner agencies that they work with. But as an organization, oftentimes, and I hope there's no clients here, but sometimes they're not integrated within their own organization. So they stumble upon, it's the age-old, wish clients would implement, right? But they bring us to the table. Don't tell IT that they're doing this. IT is upset because they didn't know that we're going to come in and insult some of the stuff that they've developed. I mean, it's really poor communication. Everything we've talked about today so far, all the challenges are around poor communication. I would challenge clients to try and be more integrated as an organization and understand all the right players that need to be in the room when you're trying to accomplish a task. And I think that would make things a lot more successful. My best clients have always been ones that have made this decision to embark on doing SEO with the help of everyone who needs to be involved, IT, marketing, and leadership.
Yeah, I think it's the clients who stop thinking of their agencies as silos. I mean, I think we all work in places where, maybe you have all the business, maybe you have a piece of the business, but the places where there are multiple agencies competing, like, bring them in. Like, if we can't figure out how to work together, then that's our problem, not your problem. But we're all focused on driving that business objective, so let us do that for you. Let us kind of figure it out, and we'll figure out the turf later.
The business objective piece, definitely, for sure. And we know that there are going to be fires that are going to pop up over the course of the 6 months, year, 18 months, permanently, however long we're working with you. There are going to be things that pop up, but I mean, the less that we can focus on kind of individual keywords and making sure that we're looking at the whole, that we're keeping our eye on that bigger prize, the better your results are going to wind up being.
Yeah, Kara, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think you made a great point in terms of thinking about come to us with a goal that you're trying to achieve versus do a specific project. I don't know if you have an example of something where a client has come to you with that type of request and how you've been able to come up with a strategy that worked.
Yeah, I mean, we have a real estate client who's a perfect example. They came to us and they said, we want SEO and we want PPC. And as we delved into it, we realized, wow, their business model and the way that they make money is different than the way this is currently set up. So by exploring basically their business model, we restructured the paid search account. So it wasn't just drive us traffic for paid search. It was aligning the paid search account with their inventory in their different buildings. And through that process, we were able to solve their business goal more effectively than if we had just said, okay, we're going to drive you a bunch of traffic.
Great, thank you. I don't know if anybody else has similar, yeah.
I was going to say, I think that's one of the problems, or not problems, but challenges with integration is you have a lot of different teams across the client organizations that all have different metrics, different KPIs. And if we're only talking about the KPIs that are important to our client, we're not going to have a resonant audience with all the different other markets. So it's important for us, to your point, to understand what those different KPIs are across the different lines of business, so that when we're talking about data, talking about how we can help, we can speak to them directly. The kind of the with him or what's in it for me type of conversation.
Great. So, I think a lot over the last 2 days has been talked about content, has been talking about intent, has been talking about sort of the buyer's journey or the funnel of where people are in their process. And I think one of the things that brings us back to, and Ray, I know this is something that you guys have been doing quite a bit of, but is just generally the idea of storytelling. So it's not just crowd the register, get somebody when they're ready to make a purchase, but what is the brand trying to accomplish and how are we engaging people at different stages along the way? So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about how you're working with some of your brands around the idea of storytelling.
I mean, I think storytelling is important from two different aspects. The first is, as an organization, being able to communicate well with our clients and be able to understand why search is important for their business is a big part of being successful in our team. So whenever we interview anyone, we always give them a project and they have to present. And John and I both have done it in our years at Publicis. And it really gives us a litmus test to understand the employee as far as where they are from their knowledge and strategy from an SEO perspective, but how good are they at communicating? And I always challenge myself and my team to, when they present, don't talk about keywords, because keywords don't buy products. It's people that buy products. So, every keyword is a question. Behind every keyword search is a person that needs an answer to that question. And where I sort of had a breakthrough years ago is it's a simple reframing with clients of saying, do you want to rank for acne treatment, or do you want your brand to be available or visible when consumers are searching for acne treatment options? It's the same exact thing, but that second way of framing it gets a much stronger response. So that's really important for us, and that gets us much deeper and more engaged with our clients because we frame everything in the sort of consumer behavior. And sort of the keywords and all that is sort of secondary because we talk about it at a much broader level. For us specifically in healthcare, that consumer journey is really important. The people, especially on the RX side, that are diagnosed with a condition don't choose to be in that group. They don't want to be in that group. It's not like buying shoes where they're excited. They're in denial. They have questions about, what does this mean? Am I going to die? What's my life going to be like? How do I tell my parents? How do I tell my children? So it's not a, today I want shoes, and 2 days later I found the shoes I wanted and I bought them. It's, I have symptoms, I don't know what they are. It takes me 3 weeks to get a doctor's appointment. I have to take a blood test. I go to the doctor, I find out what it is. Now I have to figure out, what am I going to do? What's my course of action? It is an emotional journey. So, for our clients, that journey mapping becomes very important. So when you think broadly about just the start of symptoms into some sort of diagnosis, having our brands being present throughout that becomes very important. But also the tone in the content that we're asking our clients to either create or partner with publishers to create is a big part of what we do, because it is an emotional journey for people that are diagnosed with these diseases, and it's a big role that we play with our clients. Sorry, that was a speech, but it's when you work with these healthcare clients, it's very emotional when you think about some of the things that some of the patients go to, and we're very fortunate that with our agency we get access to some of these patients, and it's amazing not only what they go through, but sort of how they persevere and sort of the steps that they took.
Yeah, and so bring it back to also thinking about just how you're working with your clients, even from a reporting on some of that perspective, right? There's a difference between working on things that are, if we're thinking from an e-commerce perspective, at the register, ready to make a purchase, versus educational, and whether that is building brand about a product or about symptoms or something. So how do you deal with your clients to get them to understand the value of creating the content at different stages along the way? Also, how do you think about measuring the performance of all of that at different stages along the way, right? You can very easily measure what's happening when someone's making a purchase, but thinking about the value of what that is and how you report back to your clients on whether or not that's working, I'm curious. And maybe Herndon, you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure. So for retail and e-com clients, the story for us around content is usually kind of comes back again to that funnel. we are very much focused on those bottom ends where people are really looking to convert. But just like you run into with PPC, with display, with any other kind of performance media, eventually you're tapping about as much as you possibly can of that market. In order to be able to create more customers down the line, you're going to have to start speaking to people earlier in that process. For us, that's been a really effective way to look at, approach, and talk about content. To be able to start getting it, to be able to start getting our clients building that kind of content, even if for us, we want it to be more about that branding end. It's kind of more, it's kind of that baby step up to eventually we want you to be speaking to your clients, not just trying to get them to the cash register a little faster.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I also think we're doing a lot with attribution. Like we've made a lot of investments in tools, brought in a lot of staff, and really have focused on kind of the whole ecosystem of attribution and saying, because a lot of our clients are both on and offline, so they have offline transactions. So how do you attribute what the value of that digital, whether it's content or paid search or organic, into the in-store traffic? And really kind of focusing in a lot of cases, letting the kind of the higher level math do the heavy lifting and show us that value for them, but really kind of getting them to understand that it's no longer kind of this linear path, that they're getting it from everywhere, and we need to be able to show the value of how this influenced that channel and that channel, so that we're almost never having a single lane conversation. Even if we don't own it all, we're coming in with the data from all the places to show it's not, yes, your paid search went up, but you had a brand campaign in market, or you launched this content marketing program, or this over here. This is your whole campaign, and this is your true ROI across all of that investment, no matter who managed it. But then ultimately, this is what it takes to build your business.
Great, and I think that's an interesting way to think about some things, is not just the channels and the way that they're working together, but also just different mediums or different tactics that you're taking, whether it's not just text or paid, but it's also thinking about video. It's thinking about things like PC versus tablet versus mobile. And I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about ways that you're either working at the agency or with some of your clients on different types of campaigns or tactics across different types of mediums.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. I think we've spent, again, going back to that customer journey, a lot of time thinking about how people interact with the brand and what platforms they would use, not just in general, but at different points in that funnel, and understanding how, what their needs are. So if they are maybe higher up in the funnel, they're doing some light research on their phone, would they be more likely to sign up for an email alert versus like filling out a full application? And is that a more appropriate technique for us to use to capture that information?
I think for us, the one thing that we keep pushing clients to do is around this idea that your marketing campaign doesn't need to be matching luggage, right? And we sort of live through this year of like, well, my website has to look exactly like my television campaign, and everything has to look the same. And what we're really pushing clients to do is think differently about all of these platforms and what's the right content and the right time to present that content on those platforms. So you bring them through the journey as opposed to saying the same exact message across everything you do.
Well, Herndon, I can see you nodding your head. I feel like you're agreeing with a lot of that. I don't know if you have any examples of things that you might have done that sort of fit in with some of that.
No, just thinking about all the different times where we've tried to kind of match things up. Kind of getting a little bit more into the paid media piece. One of our creative services actually does a very booming business in redoing some of our clients' display ads, because usually they're framed up using artwork and approaches and slogans and things like that are taken from traditional media. And the second that you actually translate some of those same things over to the way they should be laid out for an online audience, we're seeing click-through rates skyrocket. So it's less kind of on the SEO side of things, but just knowing exactly who you're talking to, and making sure that you're just making that translation even from that basic end, that traditional to online, let alone how that then functions as you move onto a mobile website. Is it designed strictly for mobile users? Is it responsive? What's going to work best for somebody right at that moment?
Great. Well, I think that's enough of me asking questions of you guys. I think there's probably a lot of questions from people in the audience, so I don't know if we could bring the lights up a little bit. I think there's some people with microphones out there. But if we have any questions from anybody in the audience, feel free. Looks like we have someone right here in the front.
this is maybe a little bit out of left field, but I'm intrigued and confused about the fact that our industry is just on a super growth path. There's no question about that. And when I look at Google Trends and things like that, just for the term SEO, it's actually dropping, right? And so it seems like it's become SEO is becoming this huge thing that's also content marketing, that's also responsive design, that's also all these other things. Like, what do we call ourselves? You guys have chosen web presence management, which I think is a good term, but nobody's using it yet. Like, what are we going to call ourselves 12 months from now?
We talk about this internally all the time. We throw jargon out. We sort of have said a lot on ecosystem optimization because it's really optimization of everything you create digitally, but also understanding from a content perspective, how is it all linked together in the right way. I don't know if that'll take off, but I agree with you. I would love to see us start thinking differently about how we talk about ourselves. But for years, I've also said that I hate that PPC is called search marketing.
Yeah.
For me, it's about the holistic approach to paid search and organic search is search marketing. We're all marketers, but no one's ever picked up on that either.
So we still talk about our SEO services as SEO, but we've moved much more into a mode where we're kind of talking about it and presenting it much more as owned media and earned media kind of working together. Just because SEO does touch on all of those different pieces, but doing content just for SEO purposes is it's missing the forest for the trees. Doing link building for SEO purposes, same thing. So each of them, each of these are their own discipline that have to be done well with SEO baked into them, which is why I think we've kind of stuck with the SEO name, but still very much talking about things in terms of owned and earned media.
I actually think the more that we break down that SEO barrier, the better. I think we're going to have an easier job kind of influencing clients' business by not limiting ourselves and calling ourselves SEOs. I think ultimately we want to be able to influence their business, and that is pervasive through their organization. So the more that we can come in, we've gone with integrated media. Like that is search, it's display, it's organic, it's content, all of that lives underneath, and analytics all live underneath what we call integrated media.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump on the Will Reynolds bandwagon. I mean, we could just call ourselves marketers with expertise in digital. I think we touch a lot of those different touch points, as the panel's already said, and we're uniquely positioned to be able to influence a lot of different mediums. Again, it's an exciting industry, probably one of the reasons it's growing so quickly, but it's, we're being forced to think a lot more like marketers, not about, where we fit a keyword into a page. So, I'm happy that we're losing a little bit of that SEO mantra a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've started talking about the role of a digital conductor, so somebody who sits over everything and sees everything and is able to understand where the gaps are and basically be that role of conducting all the channels.
Anybody else? Right here.
I have a question about competition. Did you ever have a situation when you have to manage 2, 3, 5 different companies who compete with each other out there on the market, and how did you deal with that?
We deal with that pretty frequently. Brands that'll, especially within kind of the retail division, they'll have several different companies, but all of which are pursuing some of the same designers, the same kinds of terms. To some degree, there's always going to be some kind of competition and politics internally as far as how that goes. But I think SEO at the very least is in a little bit of an easier position just because there's so much that isn't necessarily in our control. The best that we can do is really optimize all the sites for what they're going to be able to perform for best. And if it comes down to the point where they're having to compete over those terms, at the very least, it means that all of those brands are showing up for some of those same terms that they're looking for and dominating much more of that page. Otherwise, it just kind of comes down to prioritization in terms of what site the client sees as their most important.
I think for us, we deal with all the time too, and it's really about transparency with the client. We're also fortunate enough with Publicis that we have so many office locations. We can move business around to different offices with different teams in order to create those firewalls, to sort of mitigate some of that.
Any other questions? Going once? Going twice. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.